Part 5 of Chapter 4.1 Themes Art in the Public Sphere is this segment. So, we're going to look at a minimalist sculpture from Richard Serra in the very early 80s, 1981. And this was in the Federal Plaza. This is Corten steel, 12 feet high. It's a little hard to see the relative size to a human being, but this is 12 feet high. You can kind of see that a little bit more where the people are near it, but it's, twice human height, um, and it's a long, heavy piece of steel that is obstructing the view of this staircase going up to the General Services Administration right here, this building. So what happened was a lot of the employees that work at the building and other community members complained about the piece. They felt that it was obstructing their walkway here, but what Richard Serra was trying to do was to call attention to this walkway and to the way people proceeded through the space. Well, that was a bit too arty or artistic, or how do you want to say, over their heads. They weren't really that comfortable with this, so a lawsuit ensued. And some people thought it was a safety hazard and it was going to promote graffiti on it, on this wall. And somebody even said something about rats. I'm not exactly sure how they were assuming that, how it was going to attract rats, but or even terrorists. But the point is that when the public is feeling something that tax dollars is gone to and that doesn't reflect their belief system or their sense of utility or their sense of artistic achievement, they have room to complain about this. Richard Serra's comeback to that was that if he were to move the piece, it was to be removed, then it should be destroyed because it was created, as all his works are created, for a very specific space. And he stuck to his guns once they decided to remove the piece, and it was recycled in that sense. But he did win the court case, but he lost the overall war, as it were. Won the battle, lost the war, because it was removed and recycled. And people were very frustrated to have to think about their walking path. It wasn't something they felt needed to be thought of. Now you have to think about minimalism a little bit here and where Richard Serra is coming from. Very conceptual type of artwork, not a figurative bronze, as a memorial to something in the way that perhaps a lot of artists, and even still today, 1981 is a while ago now, people are still thinking that this might be a little too much for them, or they're not getting what this art piece was about. So he felt it was site specific. It was, and so he decided to destroy it once it was removed. He's had other pieces very large like this out of this Corten steel, massive, massive pieces, and most of them truly are site specific, but some of them do travel in the way that he wants them to be seen by other people. So it was commissioned by the GSA, the General Services Administration, but then it was eventually removed. So there was a controversy here, and it was eventually removed. Maya Lin, this is a really amazing memorial, Vietnam Memorial in DC also. And she is somebody who went through even more controversy and more pressure, and she kept the work in place. It's still there today, the Vietnam Memorial. Really beautiful memorial, but a lot of people were offended that, again, it was a bit of minimalism. It was just a wall, similar, not unlike what Serra was putting forward, but she did have the names of the fallen soldiers from the Vietnam War. And she won over the veterans, but there were a lot of other people that fought against her. But she was somebody who persevered, and very emotional memorial, and people really love it. Okay, so moving on to Diego Rivera, this is a bit more of a traditional piece in the sense that it's a fresco. Frescoes have been in churches and many public places and private places as well. But it's an older art form. The Egyptians, Romans used fresco on large wall pieces. And of course, in the Renaissance, we see it have a resurgence. So Diego Rivera, he's really the master of frescoes. During this time, he's even reviving it again. So, we hadn't really seen many frescoes. That's a generalization. Of course, there's always more specifics, but for about 500 years since the Renaissance, and Diego feels that these public works should be shown for the people. Very socialist, communist leaning person, very much of a man of the people. So originally, this work was going to be in New York City at Rockefeller Plaza inside, and Rockefeller himself asked him to paint this mural. Now, once it got started, 32 is when they agreed to do it, and then once Diego Rivera started the mural, he decided to put in an image of Stalin and communism and the workers and so on over here on this side of the mural. Well, Rockefeller objected to this, being a capitalist and a wealthy man. He felt that was a bridge too far, and he destroyed it. Had it removed, and meaning in that sense, a fresco can't really be preserved all that well. You can move it to a degree, but at any rate, it was destroyed. Then Diego Rivera goes back to, Mexico City, his hometown, and he says, "This is what I want to put up, on the wall here," and they agreed to have him do it. So originally, what he proposed to Rockefeller was sort of this dynamic between technology and nature, and Rockefeller liked it, but wasn't going to have a picture of Stalin up. So it was changed. There's some other controversy. There's another couple of murals in San Francisco people are voting on to get removed, showing slaves, and I can't recall now, but I'd have to look that up. That would be something interesting to look out for extra credit. But there was very recent 2018 to 2019 some parents at a school that inherited a mural took offense and decided to destroy it. So we're on to our last piece, Tijuana Projection. Now, this is an amazing piece in that it's really hard to encapsulate or capture the emotional level of something that is going wrong, or a very desperate situation with the maquiladoras, the factory workers in Mexico. And there have been so many that have been killed and have gone through terrible circumstances. So what this Polish artist did was to interview these different individuals and have them tell their story about all the negative aspects of working in the factories in Mexico. Sexual harassment, rape, and torture, all kinds of things that have been happening. And just the substandard working conditions were atrocious, and even poisoning was happening. So, in this way, he felt the best way to demonstrate this, and this is at Insight, which happens periodically in Tijuana, and it's projected. This was something that there's a lot of artwork happening on the San Diego Tijuana sort of border in that area, where there's a lot of border attention, and different artworks are commissioned through, I want to say, the San Diego Museum of Modern Art for one, but other organizations as well. But he's projecting these faces up in this way, is trying to really get a sense of the largeness here, but really trying to communicate the largeness of the problem. and just devastating things that these different individuals have to say. But he's trying to make more of an art piece in the sense that, you know, he could just make a movie or a video of artists, of these factory workers telling their stories, but this is something a little bit larger in terms of the scale. You know, we have this large face, and she becomes um, the embodiment of these tragedies. And there's several people, of course, that are also speaking. But really interesting artwork, projections. Another interesting artist in this way is J.R., a photographer, and we're going to cover him later in the book. But these are the different types of public art, and there's many more. You know, you really think about your bronze statue with a figure on it. That's our classical, going all the way back to Greek and Roman times. Particularly the Romans would have a person such as an emperor or a conqueror, and sometimes even on horseback, in a large bronze, and that would be placed into a square or a plaza. So public art takes on many forms. Sometimes it's controversial, sometimes it's temporary in the case of this projection. Frescoes, back to Diego Rivera, those are very permanent and long lasting, usually, as well, at least as long as the building lasts. And with something like Richard Serra's piece, that was site specific. That's another good vocabulary word to remember. Okay.